Vikash, how old is Amy Adams in this movie, do you think?
I think she's in her 30s.
Okay. If she could change the past...
If I say 30s, she'd probably be like 35-ish at most.
If she could change the past, then if she's 35, why didn't she stop 9/11?
Guys, signing off. This has been episode 2 of the Cinema Pursuit. We're never gonna come back. We're canceled.
Okay, no, it's no.
Bye,
but
guys.
I do want to.
Welcome to the Joe Rogan podcast.
I do.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Cinema Pursuit. My name's Vikash, and my co-host is
Zach. Happy to be back.
Yes, I'm happy to be back too, and I love hearing all the love from everybody from the first podcast. And we're back this week with another great movie. Spoiler warning, we're going to be talking about Arrival this week, and if you haven't seen the movie, it's streaming on Paramount Plus and Netflix. Go watch it, because we're going to be talking about spoilers right off the jump. So that's your warning. A quick summary for the movie. Arrival is a Denis Villeneuve directed science fiction film that follows a linguist, Louise Banks, played by Amy Adams, as aliens arrive on Earth with 12 pods that are scattered across the Earth. Louise is recruited along with physicist Ian Donnelly, played by Jeremy Renner, to go to the alien pod that is located in Montana. They're instructed to make first contact and translate the language of the aliens. In the process of deciphering their language, Louise discovers their intentions and the change that it might bring to her life as she is able to see past, present, and future all at the same time. That is Arrival.
All right, so we're here and we're ready to discuss Arrival, one of our favorite science fiction and honestly just one of our favorite movies of the 2010s. And Vikash, what I want to ask you about is, where were you in 2016?
2016. So this movie came out in November 2016. We were still in undergrad at that time. I think I was probably taking like anatomy or something like that, but on some like real vibes. I remember it not really being a good time in my life. That's like that year of college was, I was in the dumps. I ain't gonna lie, not because of like school, but just my mental state. But I saw this movie in the theater alone. I went at like maybe 1 or 2 o'clock, and I was a couple weeks after release, and I was the only person in the theater. That was an experience in and of itself. And this is the second time within like 2 years where one of my favorite directors makes a science fiction movie, and then I'm like crying the entire movie. I'm like, You know what the other one is, Zach, right? Zach was there when we saw Interstellar. I know he loves to tell this story about me in Interstellar. What was I doing during Interstellar, man, when we saw it in IMAX?
Oh, dude. So, I mean, there's two different things. One, and this is spoilers for Interstellar. I apologize. Skip like 2 minutes into the pod if you don't want to hear it. The scene where they look out when they're on the first planet, the water planet, and they say, oh, that's not a mountain, that's waves. I remember I turned to look at Vikash, he's sitting to the right of me, and he had his mouth wide open. It was like he was just in shock. And then later in the movie,
and I will tell anybody, do not watch trailers. If you can avoid a trailer, if you can watch the first trailer and then just skip it, do that, because that's the reason why my mouth was open. I was so whiplashed by that movie as I was whiplashed by Arrival 2.
Yeah, and the second part in that movie too, which is pretty funny, or not funny, but it was cool, that when Matthew McConaughey, when he finds out how long it's
47
been.
years.
40, you know it. You already know the years. I remember you, dude, you had like tears going down your face. I've never seen you into a movie more than I've ever seen you into that movie before and since.
The only movie I've cried in not a lot of movies, enough movies, but like recently I saw Origin, Ava DuVernay's movie coming out soon. And that movie, it felt like the whole theater, like we were crying for half the movie. It was that great. But
okay, let's get back on Arrival. Yeah, so when I was first saw this in the theater, we talked beforehand. I thought I saw it with you, and apparently we didn't. So I guess it was just me and Kat, at the time my girlfriend, but my now wife. We saw this in 2016 in theaters. I'm assuming it was pretty close to when it came out, November, December range. I just remember when in the theater, the first half of the movie, I was just kind of like, okay, this is good procedural stuff. But I don't know where it's going quite yet, but it seems like a soft sci-fi, and I'm sure it's going to get somewhere eventually. And then like we said, there's going to be spoilers in this podcast. When it gets to the turn where the movie really starts to piece together, when you start to realize that, oh, Amy Adams, who plays Louise, when she starts to see everything all at once, when she can see her past and her future, and she has a few visions beforehand, and you're still like, okay, maybe it's flashbacks. You don't really know where she is in her time. And then it's like, oh no, like it's all happening to her at once now. She can see the past and the future on one plane. And then the movie gives you her perspective where it starts cutting through. It's like you're seeing her life as she sees it, and the way I've never seen that put onto film before that way. The concept
editing
of
in this movie is impeccable for that, though.
Yeah.
Because it really is just like time is a flat circle. Like Nietzsche, whatever.
It is.
It really is that.
It does.
Nietzsche's referenced, it's kind of like bar for bar in the story of your life, in that short story that this is based off of.
So remember,
it's not lost.
You remember True Detective, Vikash, right? The whole time is a flat circle. So
if you haven't seen True Detective season 1, go watch that.
So that was the first time where I thought, learned about the concept of, time being like this next plane of existence where there could possibly be a creature or something out there that sees time like we see the horizon, like we see a mountain in the distance.
Yeah.
And
so it's
this movie actually did that.
Being,
yeah.
And so does Interstellar, actually. And Interstellar made this movie change the ending of the movie.
Really?
So a fun fact about the ending of this movie is that the aliens gift us a language. What they were supposed to do before was they were supposed to gift us a like Noah's Ark spacecraft. So all very much a la Interstellar, where it's like, oh, we're supposed to leave Earth or this or that. And that's not what it was. And what they did instead with language, I think, is much more beautiful, much more like there's a philosophical meaning to life as it is, being specifically a language, and a language that is said to be a gift and a weapon. We'll talk about that.
No. Yeah. And just to make a short comment, I agree. I think language turned out to be way better of a choice because of just all the philosophical connotations that come with it than just like a spaceship. So I agree. Let's move on. Let's actually talk more about the movie. Let's dive into it. So one of the things that really stuck out to me about the movie that I found smart was it shows you little bits of panic. It'll cut the newsreels into little things on the TV, or like early on, in the beginning.
So what happens, like, have you seen or remember when we watched Close Encounters, God knows how many years ago?
Yeah.
It very much is like a narrative thing. Every one of these first contact movies, typically they have a lot of your narrative. You'll have a character who is quite literally going through that panic, or they're between the panic or something like that. Amy Adams's character, Louise, is only in it maybe once, right? After that, we're kind of pulled back from it and we see news clips. And it very much is procedural, but it's like every single clip that we see has a very specific reason why it's shown. And this movie really is taught in that sense of, I think it runs like an hour and 50 minutes, and it could have gone 2.5 hours for me, honestly.
Yeah. And in those scenes, like, it's not like violence or anything, really. It's panic. The biggest source of
there's some
panic
looting.
you see
There's
in the
one
movie.
clip of looting.
Well, yeah, sure. But the biggest source of panic you see or destruction you see in the movie, besides that, I guess, is the car getting rear-ended when they're all trying to leave the college parking lot in the beginning.
True.
Something small,
True.
a detail like that, where it's like that would probably happen. Everybody's really rushing to try to get out of the parking lot because this earth-shattering thing's
like
happening,
collectively
and
on
someone
Earth,
gets rear-ended.
Yeah.
It's not. No one's hurt.
Yeah.
It's not a violent, car crash, but just a little detail to show, oh, these people are really rushing. These people are scared.
It's a fender bender, but it's almost like tonally, it's like a light tap of like, oh yeah, this is real, this is happening.
Yeah.
Where it's like the entire, after we see the future with his daughter, it's like every single thing where she's walking by and she sees everybody at the screen, and then when she walks in the classroom with the dings from the phones, every single thing is almost like with the editing, it's almost musically just like crescendoing up. It's coming up and it's slowly coming up. And then we ultimately see her get in the conversation with Forrest Whitaker's character, the Colonel Weber. And then they show up at her house and they take her there. And then we see the shot of, the helicopter coming by and the clouds going off the hills. Fun fact, Zach, the clouds that are in the movie in the first opening shot of us seeing the space pod itself, those clouds are all real. That's not CGI. Like they were really rolling off the hills like that beautifully. And talking about CGI, every single one of those helicopters is fake. Even the one outside of Luis's house, every single one is fake. Every single one.
They do a good job with that.
Denny the goat, man. Denny knows what he's doing.
I do want to bring up some of, talking about the restraint, I do want to bring up some of the other procedural choices that they made that I thought was really smart. Denis always showed his work, which I think is really important in a science fiction movie that's supposed to be grounded like this. So I want to bring up a couple of them. One thing that stood out to me was the doctor when he was giving shots against bacteria. That's a little thing, but they're considering, we don't know what type of infection could come from this.
Yeah, so that sort of detail, so my background is in STEM and biology, so every single one of those details always gets to me, and I always love it. I will say that Louise, her being a linguist, she's in the STEM field, and that's such a big win to have a woman in the STEM field being a lead for a movie. But besides that, all the stuff that he's talking about, it very much brings you in, same thing, into the environment. It's like, oh yeah, we don't know what's going on. This is, if we really had to do this right now, if aliens showed up to Earth, this is exactly what would happen to us.
Yeah.
I love it.
Another one too that was cool was the canary in the UFO.
So the canary, the reason why they have the canary there is that a canary, their system, just their immune system, their entire bodily system is kind of lesser than ours. So if they can't manage, we can't manage. Isn't that that's the reason the bird is there.
Yeah, isn't that like the canary in the coal mine, right? That's what it is when oxygen starts to run out.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting how the set that Patrice made for this movie for the heptapods, it very much looks like coal too, right? I didn't even think about that, Zach, bro. Blowing my mind.
What do you mean?
Like the walls inside, they're black like coal.
Oh,
if you go into a coal mine, yeah. But you know what it is for me. It's like when it comes to these movies, when it comes to a good science fiction movie, for me, they always ask questions, right? And for me, it's like the question in this movie is, what would you do in Luis's situation if you were given this language, given these ideas, and you knew that, okay, I'm gonna try not to cry, but you knew that you were like gonna fall in love or like have a kid and this is gonna happen, what would you do?
So I did think about this a lot, and I got to zag a little bit, and I'm not trying to, but no, for real, in this situation, I don't think you have a choice. And this isn't a personal philosophy of mine. I'm not sure how I feel about determinism, but in this situation where you can see your whole life in the same way that I can see all four walls in the room around me, you don't have a choice to make different decisions because you already made them. You already made all your decisions. So she may not be consciously able to comprehend it, but every decision she makes at that point has already been made. She already made it, and all she is doing is living through those experiences that were already made for her by her past self, essentially.
True. But I think for me, it's like there's almost like the time travel element of it where it's like, okay, but Tai Ma, the General Shang, he tells her this in the future, but she's percepting this from before, and it's changing the past to make the future. And there's all this like time travel nonsense that I don't even want to go into. But for me, it's like emotionally, I'm like, I think what it shows is that Louise has this like equanimity to her, where she understands that she's gonna have in her life. Everybody goes through it. Like if you believe in like reincarnation, all this stuff, then it's like. Y'all talk about karma here. We say karma, it's like a plural form of that word, but just the meaning that we're going to have good times in our life and we're going to have bad times in our life. And all that goes around, comes around. It very much simply, that's how it goes. But for her, she has to be like, yeah, I have to accept the good that's going to come and the bad to come at the same time. And for her to go on and live her life and go as long as she did without telling her husband, Jeremy Renner's character, that what's going to happen, that's a tough person. That's like a mentally strong individual. And it just makes me think so much more of her.
Yeah.
That's my take on that.
No.
And for me, it's like, I would still go on with life. If I had a choice of not to do it or to do it, I would do it.
Well, that's my point.
I don't.
I
I'm
don't
not going to
think
zig or zag. That's me.
I don't think you have a choice at that point. I think you've already made every decision, whether you're aware of it or not. Every decision's been made.
But that's my problem. My problem is that when it comes to like Eastern or Western philosophy, like when it comes to like determinism and all this stuff, every other ism that comes from like a Western, philos, is that it's always about like, stroking your beard and thinking about this stuff. It doesn't feel applicable to our lives in a sense, right? Like, yeah, sure, we have to be moral individuals or this or that, but determinism is kind of saying like, yeah, like it doesn't really matter either way. So just live your life, which I mean, you should to a certain extent, but you should also try to be responsible with the time that you have on Earth, right?
Yeah, no, I get that, and I'm not saying I subscribe to determinism, but I'm saying
conceptually,
conceptually,
I just don't
if
like
you can
Western
see
philosophy anymore.
No, I get that, but conceptually, if you can see every decision you ever made and you see it all at once, then what's there to change? Because any change you would have made would have been part of that your life. That's kind of it's a mind bender, but
it gets into that time travel. It's like it's stroking a weird nerve in my brain where it's
I get that.
It matters and then it doesn't matter, but it's life itself where it's like it feels paradoxical, but it's also simple.
There's two types of time travel movies, okay? There's a time travel movie where you can change the past, and there's a time travel movie where you can't change the past. And this is one of those where you can't. Like Tenet that you can't,
But I think this, like, for me, it's like there's a beauty to that though, right? I think what they were trying to do with this movie, what Denis, Eric, like everybody, Ted Chiang, like everybody who kind of had a visual feel or like a narrative feel to this movie, a touch to it, they were trying to show some sort of love and intimacy through this story. And that very much comes through, does it not?
Vikash, how old is Amy Adams in this movie, do you think?
I think she's in her 30s.
Okay. If she could change the past...
If I say 30s, she'd probably be like 35-ish at most.
If she could change the past, then if she's 35, why didn't she stop 9/11?
Guys, signing off. This has been episode 2 of the Cinema Pursuit. We're never gonna come back. We're canceled.
Okay, no.
Bye,
but
guys.
I do want to.
Welcome to the Joe Rogan podcast.
I do want to ask you something else, okay? Because you did touch on something there about good times and bad times, and I think the movie, I know the movie, a lot of it is about unification and, coming together, and we'll touch on that, but I really think a big part of the movie is grief, and I think the whole movie is her figuring out how to deal with the grief of losing her daughter.
Exactly.
And coming to terms with it.
But it's almost like an onion for her where she's peeling it back. It's like, for her, it's just like, I'm seeing this girl. And the perspective that she sees the daughter at first is like, there's this girl and I'm dreaming about her, or I'm having these visions about her, but I don't know who she is. Right. And then it's like, it's just like, there's this like a audio visual, like realization that she has at a point where, it's like, that's actually my daughter and he's my husband and this and that. And then she has that feeling of like realization, but she's slowly realizing it. You're right.
Yeah. I did want to ask though, so part of this movie, I feel like at the end it's talking about the unification through shared understanding, something that I think all art tries to do. I think part of art is communicating to other people. And the thing is, I want to ask you, do you think this movie is a reflection of art's purpose, shared understanding?
Yes, I think it is, because I think the whole movie, okay, I'm going to go into it right now, is that what I was talking about when it comes to language, the reason why language is a gift and it's a weapon, same thing with movies. It's a gift and it's a weapon. Because certain people, they show the guy on the radio and how he gets into the minds of the military guys, and then they literally put a bomb up there and they're trying to kill these aliens, which they don't know their intention and this and that. And then at the same time, Luis figures out that it's actually a gift that they've given us, and that gift can unite everybody, but it can also destroy everybody at the same time. And just not to get like philosophical or like real Hindu with this, but it's like we're all given time on Earth. Like the only guaranteed thing we have in our lives is being born and dying. And every single person on Earth gets the same amount of energy, same amount of potential to go on and do something special with their lives. And what we do with our lives is, kind of is up to us, right? I do believe that we do have free will in that sense. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I mean, you did. Well, one, I appreciate that you agree with me that art's purpose is shared understanding, or at least one of the purposes of art.
Thing about this movie is like when it comes to language, it's also what happens with film is that I haven't been to a place. I've never been to China, but I've seen Scorsese's Kundun, right? And the story of like the Dalai Lama and this and that. I see other cultures. I've never been to South Korea, but I know the culture through watching their films. If you know, what Bong was talking about when he won his Oscars, that if you get through that little subtitles, if you get through that, we can share perspectives and realize that there's like xenophobia would be gone if we had a language between all of us where we can all communicate and we can learn about each other and realize like we're not so different. Everybody has no matter how much money you have, everybody has their problems in life, right? You're going to feel sadness, you're going to feel regret, you're going to feel happy, you're going to feel sad. Everything is always there. And film itself will always be there too to give you stories that shows you perspectives that people have in the world. And I think it's very bold for anybody to go and have that perspective. And if you have a bad perspective, that shows. And if you have a good one, that shows too. And I hope that people would have good perspectives to share about humans, about themselves maybe, to give to other people.
So I think that was a good discussion about the themes and the philosophy of the movie. I do want to ask you a few questions about the acting and directing and the other elements if you're ready to move on.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, just broadly, do you feel like this is Denis' most hopeful movie? Because his other movies did not really give me a lot of hope. Sicario was very bleak. You know,
I think I've seen a little bit more than you have. I've seen
most of his.
Which, so Polytechnique, that's quite literally a school shooter movie. That was rather controversial in the area where Denis made it. It's very much a personal story to where he's from in Canada, in French Canada. And that, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's hopeful. I think Denis is one of the most brutal filmmakers possible. And so we're going Polytechnique, Incendie, Prisoners, then Sicario, Enemy, this, Arrival, Blade Runner, and Dune. And this is the most hopeful, for sure.
Doesn't this stick out like a sore thumb for like his early stuff?
Oh, yeah. Very much. No. For all of his movies, it sticks out as a sore thumb.
You can make an argument that there's some hope.
Like I said, he's extremely brutalist. But I think he's extremely brutalist. But I think the opening of this movie, the way that it's crafted around a parent and their child, and the intimacy within that, I think he's had that intimacy before in his other movies. You haven't seen Incendie, but you will see that Incendie is quite literally, it's an amazing movie, but it's completely the opposite of this movie. It's almost an antithesis about the relationship between a parent and their child.
Imagine watching Prisoners and then trying to watch this, like it's really a 180. It doesn't, he is so pessimistic about everything in the world.
There.
Yeah.
I think there's a love there about like within Prisoners of him.
I don't think so.
Of what a parent would do for their child, and like there is that sort of like motivation is there, but what narratively turns within that is completely opposite.
Yeah, I think that shows more of a dark side of what a parent will do for their child. Really, I think this is his only hopeful movie. I mean,
you could argue this is a bad side of like.
No, the way he portrays language in this movie as a gift, I disagree completely. I think this is his hopeful movie, and it doesn't make sense with the rest of his filmography. You're right. In a good way.
That's the funny part. It's like if I make movies, I'm not gonna make downers like this. I love these movies, but I will never make movies like this.
I understand that.
Or maybe like Arrival, but not like the other ones. I could not do that. And I quite literally have Blade Runner sitting behind me right now. Alrighty, on to the categories. First of all, of course, action is the juice. Where in this movie is the most juiciest scene for you, Zach? Action is the juice. Let me know.
Sure. So this is a tough movie to pick a scene because a lot of the scenes are slow moving, and when you get to the back half of the movie, the scenes are actually moving so fast that it's hard to keep up with.
True.
But I think the scene where the Chinese general gives his message to Louise at
Tai Ma. We love Tai Ma from Rush Hour.
Great
General
great
Shang.
actor, General Shang in the movie.
Yes,
when
sir.
When he
Yes,
talks
sir.
to Louise, and I have the quotes here, and I'll read them out for you. But it's
Yeah.
there's a regret, there's a warmth, and there's a regret in how he speaks to her, and he knows she has a chance to fix maybe his actions, and
Yeah.
so here's what they say. So General Shang, 18 months ago, you did something remarkable, something not even my superior has done. Louise, and what was that? Shang, you changed my mind. You're the reason for this unification, all because you reached out to me on my private number. Louise, your private number? General, I don't know your private number. Shang holds out his private phone for Louise to see. Now you know. It's a scene that doesn't say their emotions outwardly but him, the way he says, you changed my mind, when he is portraying the warmonger. He's not just portraying the Chinese, he's portraying the side of humanity that when they're scared, they put up a wall, they get aggressive, they try to pop out their chest. That's what he's portraying. And for him to say to her, you changed my mind, through language, and now I'm giving you a way to fix everything I broke, that's really powerful, and that has the most juice out of any scene in the movie to me.
And I'd argue that Tai Ma's face does all the acting within that. I like what you're talking about. That emotion comes through on his face, because you can see where it's like he's very much apprehensive. It's almost an action in his life that he's never done, and he's like, I'm not even there for this meeting. I'm here for you. And that sets the scene, and then he comes in and does this, and he's like, I think I need to do this, because he has the understanding of the time itself and this and that. It's like, how does she have this information? I have to give her the information. So they spend no time explaining this, but it's like, if you sit there and really juice on the movie, this is that scene where, and they intercut to where, and then she has to go get the sat phone, and they're running and this and that, and it very much is that sort of build up.
Yeah. And the action is right after that, with, like you said, the running around. But I think that scene is really that is almost the emotional peak of the movie right there.
The linchpin.
Yeah. So what was your action as the juice scene?
I'm corny. I'm a corny individual.
I do.
That's why my action in the juice scene is the scene of the bomb being uploaded, being upped into the they left a bomb inside of the heptapod, inside their space, and Louise and Jeremy Renner's character Ian, Louise and Ian run back up there to talk to the aliens, and the time is literally ticking, 10 minutes off the timer, and they're trying to figure out all this information. But I think the beauty of that scene itself is that Abbott and Costello already know that there's a bomb in the room. And they're spending their entire time on that side of the glass in that room, trying to get them this information, or trying to figure out, trying to get them to understand what's going on. And when they realize that they have no choice, one of them literally just squirts out, Squidward style, squirts out the entire language. They capture it, and they know that it's been captured. And then they go back, and one of them literally dies.
One thing about that scene reminded me of another Denis movie. It reminded me of Sicario. Not the sadness of the scene that you talked about, but what it reminded me of was the tension. When you see the bomb in there, no one's realized it. There's no, there is a fight outside, but you don't really see it. But what it reminds me of is, it reminds me of the Sicario scene when they're at the border and everybody's sitting in their car, and you can feel something bad's about to happen. But Denis is not showing you. There's not showing you what's about to happen. He's giving you little hints and clues, but he's just keeping it tension racking up until it explodes, which he does with the bomb.
You know who's taking that time up in Sicario as well as this scene? You know who it is?
Who?
Johan Johansson, and we're gonna get to him soon. Production value. So production value. What is the piece of this movie that is the most impressive for you, whether it's on screen or off screen? What impressed you the most, Zach?
So for me, it was the flashback cinematography, how it was shot. It was very reminiscent of how the cinematography in Tree of Life was shot, where it's all handheld. It was very naturalistic. It was a lot of close-up shots, a lot of very awkward and odd angles.
So what that is it's very much so Bradford Young is the DP on this movie. Amazing DP. If you haven't seen his work with Ava DuVernay, When They See Us, there's Selma, there's quite a few other ones, but everything that they did together was fantastic work. And what Bradford does really is, like you said, it's the shallow focus. I wouldn't say it's almost Tree of Life, because Tree of Life, what Chivo and Terrence Malick have done is they use a lot of like wide lenses, and they don't use really too many wide lenses, but their framing is very much wide in those shots. You know that shot of Louise and her daughters, like they're playing like cowboys and stuff, and Louise is like in one corner, and then her daughter's in the other corner, and they're going around and doing almost a parallax, and it very much has this feeling of dreamlike, right? It feels like,
it is dreamlike, and that's important because it's not in the present for her, even though later it all becomes the present. But for her, it's, all these different times. So everything that's in the present for her is very steady. The cinematography is moving. It's a very still camera. But when you get to those parts, that's where that cowboy scene is exactly what I was thinking of. It reminded me of the Tree of Life naturalistic type of filming that Bradford does in this movie.
Yeah, and it's not like it's the only time he uses it in the movie, because there are, I think, one random shot in the movie where Ian is sitting out on a truck, and she just comes and has like dialogue with him, and the heptapod, like the pod thing, is in the sky just behind them. But one randomly beautiful shot is the wide that they have, where like there's wind and the grass going by, and to the right is a truck, and she's walking in, and I'm just like, this is just, I don't know why, like this feels like they captured life. And Bradford very much applies that sort of like philosophy to the way that he shot Solo, and they did him so dirty on Solo. I do hope that he comes back and like makes more movies. I think he is starting to shoot stuff now, but after he did Solo for Star Wars, the man stopped working in Hollywood for a minute. That's messed up. Like, you see how talented he is, right? And especially as a DP of color. Like, he should not be someone who becomes a victim in this situation. And he is incredibly, like, technically impressive. But do you know how we know Bradford Young, Zach?
How?
Do you remember the documentary I showed everybody in high school, like for film class? The side-by-side documentary? Mm-hmm. Like Soderbergh was in it, Nolan was in it, Wally Pfister, where Keanu's interviewing people about... well, they're like interviewing people about film versus digital. And now the conversation's completely changed. We love them both. But in that documentary, Bradford Young is in that documentary, and he's one of the brightest voices that I didn't know in that documentary. And he grew, and he just started juicing, and he became this great DP. I love it. I love that we just knew him randomly.
Vikash, what's your production value moment?
My production value moments are like my one of my favorite pieces. I love what Bradford did, but I think every single piece of design in this movie, whether it's CGI, whether it's production value, whether it's the aliens, every single piece of design curated for this movie is impeccably done, because nothing feels like it's wasted, and everything feels of scale and needed to this film. And it's simple as being something like where they're shooting in a tent, and the tent feels correct. They walk outside of the tent, everything feels right. The pod looks amazing in the sky. It doesn't feel, there's no like lapse of feeling in my head. There's like a voice in the back of my head where it's like, oh, this is CGI. This is not CGI. And it could be as simple as the helicopters. It could be adding in people. Like there's so much stuff that they do in this movie that's hidden CGI. Anybody listening, if you go to YouTube and type in like Arrival VFX, you will see so much CGI in this movie that does not look like CGI. And I think it's a testament to every single person working on this film, whether it's production designer, the CG artists, Denis, everybody did something incredibly well to make a $47 million movie look like a $100 million movie.
Well, and it's a good reminder, too, of what happens when you give VFX artists time and when you give them the budget and you don't put the restraints on them. Because as you see recently, there's been a lot of movies that have been CGI forward that have not looked good. And you can go and find movies that are 10 years older and that look a lot better. And that's the problem, is that they're overworking.
But they don't have unions.
Yeah, well, and that's what I think they're working on that right now. There has been some unionization. But these groups are taken over right now. These groups are being not treated fairly because they know they can go
Taken
find
advantage
people.
of.
Yeah, and they can go find people who do a worse job for cheaper. It's not fair to them.
In Life of Pi, the people who won the VFX award for Life of Pi literally had to shut their doors. That company shut their door after they won an Oscar because the business is that bad. And that was 2014, 2013. It's crazy stuff, man. And same year, Guillermo del Toro was one of the people who actually understood the plight and struggles that VFX artists have, and they got to work a regular schedule to make Pacific Rim. And the CG in that movie is fantastic. I love seeing Pacific Rim in IMAX. Unforgettable experience that I had with Zach, actually.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
So, on to dialogues. Dialogues not in the sense of the American word. Dialogue in the sense of the Bollywood word, where every time you see a Bollywood movie, they don't have screenplay or written by or anything like that for the movie. It literally says dialogues, because the most memorable part of any movie is the dialogue that is written, the dialogue that we remember, the dialogue that we recite back to each other. So, Zach, what is that memorable dialogue for you? Because I know for this movie, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, so this is not a movie of like where people say quotes that tell the direct feelings. I mean, there's a few, but this is really a movie where the most important quote actually doesn't come from a person. It comes from Costello. So right after that scene that you talked about beforehand with the bomb, after it blows up and then they eventually go back up there, Amy Adams' character, Louise, asks Costello, where's Abbott? And Costello says, Abbott is death process. And so you got to get a little English majory with me here, because that structure,
That's
that
also a
sentence is
science
important.
thing. That's also a science thing.
No, it is. But no, the structure is important because it's not saying Abbott was alive. It's not saying Abbott is dead, like the past tense. Death process is in the present tense, where as in this is the time in Abbott's, life that Abbott is supposed to be dead or dying,
Yeah.
But it's not a finality. The way that the process is a word means that something's occurring. And so Abbott being dead is not a finality like it would for anybody else.
But it's like in the sense of like time, it's like the process is now rather than another time. So it's in a 4D sense. That's the way that they would structure that sentence, which is amazing. Yeah. And I think it's hilarious. This is a random aside, but when Louise gets there and Colonel Weber asks, like, why are you doing all this stuff? Why are you trying to get them to talk and this and that? And he says, and literally she gets on the whiteboard and writes out, like, what is your purpose or whatever she says. Do you remember Miss Crane from Oglethorpe, Zach? We had an English language arts teacher in that class. That's fine. But we used to have to go in there every morning and literally write out sentences and write out the sentence structure. What's the noun? What's the verb? What's the...
Oh, like the sentence trees,
I don't know,
or whatever they were
exactly,
called.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever it was. And that's literally what Louise was doing. It just felt like such a... Like, it's a sciencey, but it's also like a memory type thing. I liked it a lot.
Well, and it also, too, it actually shows the movie's cards a bit early when you rewatch it, because that shows the cards that they're nonlinear thinkers, or they view the existence as nonlinear. And you see that, there's so many little things that happen in this movie beforehand that gives you the twist, but you don't see it until you watch it again, which is smart and, great filmmaking.
Yeah, indeed. You're 100% right. So for me, the dialogue that really got me, same thing. It wasn't exactly something that was from emotional point of view, but it made me emotional, was from the CIA spy guy, played really well by Michael Stuhlbarg. It's a low-key role for him, but he's amazing. But what he says before like the third act picks up is that, let me see what he says. He quite literally says, it's like, oh, the people are going to fight amongst themselves till one faction prevails. What he was talking about, and he literally mentions the Germans and Rwanda, and then India and the British. And for the India British, we talk about this all the time. It's the British left, and they made the system pretty much to be a division from the Hindus and the Muslims in India for forming Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. And the same thing happened for the Rwandans. And it was, I think it's like the Hutus and the other folks. And the Hutus took power, and there was so much bloodshed and all this stuff that happened on that end. And you see, and it's not like a old thing. It was in the 1900s that the stuff happened with Rwanda. And with one line, it's like, oh yeah, this is what's gonna happen. It's like humans given the chance, and it's like it's a bad thing right now. Is that they will turn on each other, and they literally show it with the screens. It's like, oh, they turned off their screens, we got to shut off our screens, and that's not how it should be. As like just as humans, and it's a simple piece of dialogue, but it's like if you knew the context for it, it makes the world different.
So at the end of that too, he said there's a Hungarian word for it, but then he kind of trails off. I looked it up. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Hungarian word because it is incomprehensible for me.
Oh yeah, it was the Hutus and the Tutsi people. If you need to look it up for the Germans and Rwandans, it's very much worth looking up too.
Yeah. So the Hungarian word in English, it translates to salami tactics. But the word basically refers to dividing the opposition to only have to face smaller, weaker enemies. That's what he was alluding to.
That is a life lesson. We are always better together than divided. Every single system in this world is made to divide us rather than unite us. And that is a problem that we should, we're talking about Arrival, and I'm talking about that. Like that, this movie causes us to have, at least for me, to have these sorts of big world conversations within my head. And Zach was talking about the procedurals. This is a procedural moment, but it packs in that level of punch. And it's not in the script. This moment is not in the script, Zach. Think about that.
What do you mean this moment's not in the script? I don't understand.
It's literally not written in the script. I downloaded the script, and it's something that I've been doing recently with like just thinking about screenwriting, is that I sit there with a script and I watch the movie and read the script at the same time. And there's another moment in this movie, which we will talk about later, that is not in the script, and it's something that they omitted purposely to have a higher effect for it. We will talk about it.
Okay. Let's go on to the next category then. So this is the Layla. This is for the best needle drop or use of score. Let's just both of us say it, okay? It is On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter. Yeah. Go ahead, Vikash. Yes. I know you want to talk about this.
On the Nature of Daylights is one of the biggest used contents ever, like in recent cinema, whether it's Shutter Island, this, The Last of Us. There's probably many more, Zach, right? Yeah. You might have a list of it.
A lot of trailers too. A lot of trailers.
A lot of trailers too. Okay.
Yeah.
But what's the which one out of all those, like what's the moment or like where it's like this music and this visual is like framed into your head. It's etched into your mind, into your skull. It's this,
it's right? Arrival. Yeah, it's Arrival because I've seen it. It was used very well in Last of Us. It's been used in other movies, but this movie, the second, and it's used at the beginning and the end, but the second you tune into this movie and the title starts and you see that, or no, sorry, you hear that music, you're like, what is this? I've never heard this before. This is beautiful music. This is a great score, and it turns out it's actually not even part of the score. I know you know the backstory to it, so go ahead.
That I have heard. I heard it before, but it's like it's used for a very emotional moment in Shutter Island, but nothing like this is so somehow even more emotionally potent, emotionally truthful. I ain't gonna lie, Zach. Like, don't you sometimes crank this and just think about life and just start crying? Because I do. It happened today.
It is on my. I do on Spotify. I have a separate movie score playlist, and this is on the playlist, definitely. This is one of my favorite pieces of score. This and probably, this is actually not really a score, though. This was released as an album. This isn't a piece of score.
But it was used, and it's in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
But so because of that, Tony Zhu from Every Frame of Painting, great YouTube channel. He doesn't really make videos anymore, but he has a video about temp music and Marvel. This was very much just temp music that they had put in during the edit. And Johan Johansson and Denis sat down and they're like, this is beautiful. This is amazing. And if we try to go and make this music, and Johan literally had Hildur, I don't want to say her last name. She won an Oscar for Joker, but he literally has the most beautiful string artists with him. And even he was like, I can't do this. I can't be emotionally unfaithful to this moment because it is that great. And they lost out on the Oscars because of this moment, because they choose to use this rather than making a fake version that Johan composed himself. And that's artistic integrity.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that this is probably one of the best pairings of music with film that I've ever seen.
Ever.
And that's
Ever.
a reason
Ever.
why, yep. And that's the reason why this works here. But also this album was written as a protest against violence and the Iraq War. So
Really?
So it fits with this movie, as this movie is pretty much a pacifist movie. That's what it's part of its I would say pathos is. So it makes sense that it fits well, is what I'm saying.
And it's an interesting pathos of like unity and it's unity and pacifism in a way that doesn't feel like it's pushing the unity and pacifism and love in a very big way. It doesn't push the agenda in a very much forward way where a lot of directors would put it in your face, but Denis slowly creeps it into your mind and you have that emotional reaction to this movie.
Yeah, let's move on to the next section. So I'm going to let you say it, though, because you say it better than me.
Zach, you know who should have been in this movie? Let's recast a role or two in this movie. Come on, Zach, who should have been in this movie?
You ready for me to blow your mind? Because I think I got it.
Okay,
So,
okay. Hit me.
This is no disrespect to Forrest Whitaker, who did a great job in this movie.
Okay.
But I would replace him with Wes Studi.
Speaking of Wes Studi is in he's in the Hostiles, and Max Richter scored Hostiles for Scott Cooper. So just a little Kevin Bacon 6
cool.
degrees. But
So
Wes Studi.
So I have a reason
He's
for
such
it.
an amazing actor.
He is.
Okay,
I have a reason.
Because I'll put Wes Studi in any movie.
Okay. Let me just start out by saying Wes is Cherokee. He's not Navajo. But I think it'd be interesting to have a Native American in the role this is a foreign group, the aliens, coming to America, but you don't have representation of the people who were there first. And then also you could tie it into the fact of the Navajo code breakers in World War II, who were, that's what they did was they hit a language that was used to help us win the war. So I'm saying there's a lot of things that could have been tied there, because I do think it was kind of weird that there's this. Well, I think it's weird that there's this story of first contact, but you don't have the people where they experience. They're one of the only races in the world to experience first contact like that. Where we came to
them, the Aborigines,
white people came to America,
the people in Hawaii,
it was first contact for them.
The people who had their lands taken from them. Yes, you're very much right.
So I would have Wes Studi playing a Navajo, or even he can play a different type of Native American, but I would have him in the Forrest Whitaker role. That would be my casting change.
Do you have any more?
No, because I couldn't figure out one for Amy. She's really good in this, and I tried, and I have reasons I'll talk about later, but I couldn't recast her.
Okay. I'm going to recast Renner first. Jeremy Renner's character, Ian, he is a physicist in the movie and plays the love interest, the himbo in a sense, for Louise Banks, for Amy Adams' character.
Wait, you just said the himbo?
Yes, I did. He's a himbo physicist. I love it. And I know some physicists out there. They're awesome people.
Yeah.
Michelle Wang.
The himbo.
Shout out. Recasting Renner. I would recast him as Chiwetel Ejiofor. What do you think about that? Our man Chewie.
I thought about that. Not with him. No, I thought with him, but with another African American actor. The problem is that gives away the kid early on.
I thought of David Oyelowo first, actually.
If you see your daughter early on and she's mixed race, that's not gonna.
Bro, ain't nobody worried.
That's not gonna. You'll know the twist. It gives away the twist. That I thought about it too. Because I thought about putting.
I wasn't thinking like that. I was just thinking emotionally.
I was thinking about putting him from Atlanta, Paperboy from Atlanta. I can't remember his name.
Ooh, Brian Tyree Henry.
I thought about him for it, but again, it gives away the twist if you do that. That's why I couldn't do it.
Ejiofor is in the right age group, and also he has that sort of energy, that like scientist energy that I love, which he plays up as a Vincent Kapoor in, I don't know that Indian last name, but in The Martian, he really plays it up. Okay, so you didn't recast Louise, did you?
I tried.
But I'm gonna recast Louise.
Okay.
I got you. For me, it wasn't like a race thing or anything like that. I think just like emotionally, what actress that can take it on and maybe was the same age. That's what I went for. I had two actresses, and the one I went with was Jessica Chastain. What do you think? And I just feel like she's a redhead too. I didn't mean that It ain't like that.
Apparently you wanted to keep it in the redheads. I know you like redheads, but like the thing.
I like Indian women.
He's just saying that because if his parents
everybody.
listen, he loves redheads too.
No,
but let me tell you, I think that's good.
We can respect beauty.
I know. I think that's good because my whole point with Amy Adams was I couldn't think of someone who wasn't too overwhelming of a screen presence who could also be as good as she was. Because if you're too famous or too overwhelming, this role wouldn't work. Jessica Chastain might be the only other person who could do that. So I didn't even think about that. That's a good casting.
You want to hear the other one? The other one? Rachel McAdams.
No.
What do you mean?
She would have too much. No. She would be too cutesy. I think she's. I love Rachel McAdams. She would be too cutesy.
Have you seen Disobedience?
No.
With Rachel Weisz, I think she can handle it. I think she'd do it.
Rachel Weisz would be interesting.
That
would be interesting.
Don't even get me started. Don't get me started on that. She's a family favorite. We love her.
You got any other redheads to throw in the role?
No. Wait, I gotta cook one up real quick.
Okay, let's move on. Next up is hot takes. So Vikash, give me your hot take for the movie.
My hot take for this movie is that it is up there, just so it's not really anything about the movie or anything like that. I think it's I don't know if it's a hot take. Let's say it's a lukewarm take, is that this movie needed a little bit, like maybe like 20 minutes more, and I think it would be up there with Close Encounters and all that, like the goated stuff, which I think it becomes goated either way because it's about a contemporary time.
So you're saying that this is up there with all the other sci-fi movies that are great?
It's up there with all the goats, with all the goat movies about like first contact.
Can I do a spontaneous either or with you? So
yes. Okay, throw it. Hit me again.
And I'm gonna screw up the names of movies because that's what I do. But okay, Close Encounters or this.
Any names?
Close Encounters or Arrival.
Emotionally, it would be this. If I'm thinking just like level-headed, maybe Close Encounters.
Okay, I'm just talking about your personal views, not like objectively. Okay.
Arrival.
Okay. Interstellar or Arrival?
Interstellar.
Okay.
That speaks to the soul even. No, I think I agree with I agree with the ideology of both, but I think the journey is better in Interstellar.
Ex Machina or Arrival?
Bro, are you doing a sound test on me? Like you're doing okay. It is I would go Ex Machina.
The new Blade Runner Arrival.
Is this a Rorschach test? Are we in Watchmen right now?
You got the Blade Runner poster behind you. The new Blade Runner or Arrival?
Yeah, Blade Runner.
Okay.
Blade Runner.
So it doesn't sound like it's the best even of the 2010s for you.
No, it isn't. But it's up there because I think fundamentally it's very hard to make a movie like this, and they don't make these movies a lot.
I agree.
And I think they made 2 of these movies in 2016, and they're both great in my opinion.
Yeah, this is one of the better ones of the 21st century and one of the more interesting ones. So I mean, I get what you're going at. I just wanted to give you a hard time and see where it ranked in all your others. So I get that.
Okay. So Zach, give me a hot take.
So this is more of a
lukewarm take like I did.
Yeah, no, this is more lukewarm because this is a hard movie to have hot takes about because it's just a great movie. But I do have a nitpick.
Concisely made.
Denis does a decent job of justifying it, but having the Chinese and Russian act as the more aggressive to the aliens is kind of a weird choice. I think it's kind of predictable that the U.S. is the one who's trying to make this work, but the aggressive people are going to be the Russians and the Chinese. I think that's a kind of a interesting choice because why did they have to be the aggressive ones in this scenario? I mean, I understand
I think they're aggressive because they're the other world powers, but as soon as they aggress, we aggress too at the same rate.
That's a good point.
And you see it very much. It's a good idea. Good thing you mentioned this is that Louise is in her faction, in the American faction, trying to figure out this situation. And then the Russians are also trying to figure out the situation. And a Russian scientist gets the information out and quite literally is murdered for it. Yeah. And that speaks to the themes and all that sort of stuff too.
Good thing you brought that up, man. I'll admit I'm wrong about something because the way that they say in the movie, the way that the Chinese talked with the aliens was through a game. And they said that the problem with the game is that there's winners and losers. And so that explains why they shut down first is because they found the aliens to be aggressive when they weren't. And they shut down. So, my take sucks. We're good.
Let's move on. You brought up a good point. It's a good conversation, man. I don't know what else to say. Bringing in Kat, Zach's wife. Kat,
I don't
give
get
us
to
a hot
introduce
take.
my wife.
No, because you didn't do it right.
2 weeks in a row.
You didn't do it right. You didn't do it right. Put some respect on your wife's name. Put some respect
hey,
on your
guys.
wife's name.
Okay. Yeah, Zach's never gonna introduce me. I think that's what we've learned here.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So I don't have a hot take either because
But give us
this
your
movie
thoughts.
doesn't give me any
give us
kind of
your
like
thoughts.
hot takes. Well, so the big thing I had was like I remembered that this was my personal like pivotal time may not be a chronological movie. Like I think Zach said he saw Memento first, right?
You hadn't seen any Mine F movies yet. No Looper, no nothing, no Interstellar, no Memento, which is Zach's big one.
I think this was my first one. I mean, like, if we want to get technical with time as an element, I totally saw Doctor Who like crazy in high school.
Doctor Who,
but that
Doctor Who
count.
coming back. Chuti Gatwa from Sex Ed. That man's about to be
Hey,
an amazing.
Listen,
he's about to be amazing.
We're gonna talk about this.
Yes, he is. I love that
we
man.
We can't talk about it here, but
okay.
I'm very excited.
I love that man.
But this is like my pivotal time element movie. Like I didn't realize you could use flashbacks and flash forwards like to lead on the audience. Like Zach said earlier about the daughter element, you know, you think it might be her having PTSD at the beginning.
Exactly. It's
remembering the loss of her child when
tough.
Really it's the end of the movie, the end of the story.
It's as technical as a horror movie. Like horror movies, I think any
truly is.
Any genre movie, a heist movie, an action movie, anytime you make a genre film, this is science fiction. You have to have very consistent, concise pieces of editing or music or visuals. Like everything matters more when it comes to genre films, I think.
And I feel like, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, if we just change the score of this movie, nothing else, you could absolutely turn it horror with only the score changing. If think
That's
about
interesting.
it. Like,
wow. You're right.
You probably could. Maybe just a couple more quick shots, but... Oh, I'm a genius.
Cat's cooking a little bit here. So what if it was more like the score?
Wait, we're over here. We're in the kitchen.
So what if it was like the score to 2001 when they first enter the ship, that sort of thing? Does that changes the tone of it immediately, right? If they use more of a score like that than a score like they do for this movie, you could make it a little more mysterious, their intentions. The score is so hopeful that the way it's framed is they don't really show the aliens and they don't really give you a lot of to fear about the aliens' intentions. But if you change the score a little bit, like Kat said, you could definitely be a little bit more menacing or questioning about what their intentions are here. So that's a good point, Kat.
And it speaks to like the On the Daylights, where it's like that piece of music introduces you to the movie. And there are some like brutalist pieces of work, like when they first get to the first contact with the aliens for Louise and Ian. That score, when it swells so loud. I like had to turn down my TV because it was that loud.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole point, there's an intention behind that. But if you have that music and it's not juxtaposed with Max Richter's piece, then it doesn't work, does it? Right? Then it is playing into what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's like even the work that's sitting there.
I really love the score in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because it keeps it like so... It keeps it removed from being like a fearful apocalyptic kind of story and more of a like, I don't know, a more down to earth, like y'all have been saying, hopeful.
And it doesn't matter what genre it is. Like I was talking with my dad. We were rewatching yet again this show called Person of Interest. But it's like even the most didactic thing where it's like you just need music, and it's like music's gonna do intense and pull every single emotion that you're having just as much as your editing is doing that. And what Johan did with this movie, even besides Mac Richter's thing, what he does every single movie that he had, and Johan is, passed away many years now, because he was an Icelandic producer, and one of his proteges, Hildur, she's gone on to do stuff like Tar and Joker, and she's living, she's being something of a great genius after Johan's passing. But what Johan did every single time was he brought the emotion, and it never let up every single time. Think about Sicario. Think about everything else that they did together. It's like Prisoners, every single one of those scores. There's something memorable about it, and you feel scared almost every time that man, has a string or anything like that. All of his music feels scary to me now that you say that. Kat, that was a great take. That was an amazing take.
Thank you. When I was taking notes during the movie, I actually wrote down how they use not just the score, but the absence of score, the absence of sound.
That's true.
It's just the ambiance and the ambient noises and such. And that's a very horror element, but it's also very traditional in like an apocalyptic movie. Like you're sitting there experiencing it with them. It's very realistic.
Very much. And that is genius.
I kind of took a left turn here.
No. Literally, you know what I'm thinking about? I was watching a scene from a old Roger Moore James Bond movie called Octopussy, and in the opening of the movie, I was thinking about what Christopher McQuarrie talks about and what he does within his Mission Impossible movies is where there are certain things happening with action, and it's just sound effects. It's not there's no music, and it feels even more tense because there's no music telling you what to feel. It's just you're in the motion with it, and something of that like that organic sound makes you feel like you're actually there. And when the music cuts out, that meaning comes in, and you're right. This genius work here. Genius filmmakers know what they're doing.
I love film. I love it.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming on, Kat.
Always here, guys.
Our genius producer.
I'm here, man. I'm here.
Okay. On to our next segment, the Oscars. Did this movie get Oscars? Did it deserve more? Who should have been nominated? Who shouldn't? Etc. So, Oscars. This got 8 Oscar noms. I'm gonna read them off. It got
8? That's actually kind of good.
It's a lot. Yeah,
but how many did it win?
It only won one, but I'll go over it. Nominated for Best Picture, Director, Adapted Screenplay, Cinematography, Editing, Production Design, Sound Editing, which it won for, and Sound Mixing. This was before they combined the two categories. Interesting enough, this is mostly below the line categories, except for screenplay, director, and pick. But there are no acting nominations for this movie.
No, it's funny you mentioned the sound editing winning, because the guy who did the sound editing on Arrival literally has 180 sound credits to this day for sound editing, and I don't think he's made a movie. Or not sound editing, but just sound-related work. But he has never made another movie of this scale, I think. He works in Montreal, like French Canada, where Denis is from. And it's a testament to the way that Denis can work and uplift great artists who already exist and make their work even greater somehow. And the sound editing and mixing in this movie is fantastic. And it's almost every single scene where they're pulling you back and pushing you forward within the time stuff. You feel the need and the oomph. Every single like emotional punch is there when it comes to the sound editing, sound mixing. So props to them. That win is 100% deserved. Do you have any other noms that you wanted to talk about that you really vibed with?
Yeah, there's a couple that I want to talk about. First off, I think we should do the Amy Adams discussion. So she wasn't nominated for Best Actress, and this was the year that Emma Stone won for La La Land.
Travesty.
Oh no, the nomination is a travesty. I would say that Emma Stone winning is a lot more debatable, because I really, that might be a better performance. But let me read off.
Yeah.
So
go ahead. Who's nominated?
The winner, Emma Stone for La La Land. Nominees, Isabelle Huppert for Ellie.
Huppert.
I don't remember this movie.
Paul Verhoeven. Paul Verhoeven, the GOAT.
Okay, Ruth Negga for Loving, Natalie Portman for Jackie, and Meryl Streep for Florence Foster Jenkins. So Jackie and Natalie Portman for Jackie is a pretty good one too.
So I'm gonna move Meryl Streep aside. I'm not gonna talk about that. Loving, great movie. Jeff Nichols, Pablo Larraín going 2 or 3 for 3 with his biopics, with Jackie being the first one. Sean 16, great performance from her too. But it's like every single biopic, that sort of thing, is like you kind of have to immerse yourself within who that person was and all that sort of stuff. And Natalie Portman is an amazing individual, and she don't deserve anything bad that's happened to her. Wink wink. But when it comes to Amy, the reason why I'd argue the reason why, everybody kind of knows this, the reason why she didn't win was her noms were divided between Arrival and Nocturnal Animals. That's directed by Tom Ford of the fashion world, and Nocturnal Animals is a solid movie, and Amy Adams is good in it, but I'd argue that Arrival is a much better piece of work and her acting is better. And it should have never been two studios fighting over nominations to get Amy to win. And that's what made her lose this Oscar.
I agree. That was unfortunate because she at least should have got a nomination. I do want to bring up film editing too. Let me read the nominees. And what's interesting about this is a great group of movies, except for the winner, in my opinion. And any of these other ones should have won, in my opinion. So film editing, the winner, Hacksaw Ridge. Nominees: Arrival, Hell or High Water, La La Land, Moonlight. Those 4 movies are maybe the best 4 movies of this year. I don't have to say maybe. Those were the best 4 movies of that year. And all of them lost editing.
Yeah. So the person who edited this movie is Joe Walker. And if you look up his filmography, he and Denny pretty much go bar for bar. This is his editor. And what they did with this movie is kind of a miracle that it works. And it plays well. And emotionally, the editing sells so well in this movie. Because if it didn't, then we would, they were talking about recasting. And there's doubts within your mind that would come up. And those doubts never come up in your mind. And it is that precisely cut in this movie. And Joe Walker is an amazing editor.
I clicked on the wrong Joe Walker. This is the Joe Walker who was in a Harry Potter musical from 2009.
Joe Walker won the the Eddie for the editors. He's the one who won their Guild Award. And usually that Guild Award is a precursor for the Oscars. And his peers thought he had the best editing, and he didn't get the juice.
Can I read you his last few movies here?
Yeah, go ahead. I love.
He has a run here where it goes, okay, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner,
Goated.
Widows, Dune.
Goated.
That's a good run. I know most of them
Widows,
are Denis,
Widows.
but yeah, Widows thrown
Steve
in there is a
McQueen, I
good.
love him.
He's also done Shame. He's also done Black Hat, which Black Hat, but
Michael Mann.
He's done Hunger.
Steve McQueen. Yes, he was a Steve McQueen collaborator that moved over to Denis. Steve McQueen is a genius, man. Steve McQueen.
So that's really what I wanted to go over about the Oscars. This was a pretty top-heavy year for the Oscars, with La La Land getting most of the sweeping most of the awards, except famously Best Picture. So, and I'm not sure that if Arrival would have beat La La Land on a lot of these, anyways.
But
this is it's not that
right?
their fault. Who? What?
This is Denis' first nomination as a director, right?
Really? For Best Director?
Ansandi didn't get it. Ansandi didn't get it. Deserved. Prisoners didn't get it. Deserved. And Sicario deserved. Didn't get it either.
He didn't get it for Sicario? That's surprising.
That's the problem. Genre films, especially horror movies and action movies, are written off at the Oscars because and comedies, if there is that great of a comedy, I don't know. But genre movies are written off at the Oscars, and it should never be that way. Genre matters. You know that. Like, I love genre film.
I do. Let's move on to legacies. Legacies. Through the prism of time for this movie, is there anything that pops into your mind about the folks who made this movie? This is a good time for us to talk about what, now that we have some time from this movie, we have, I can't do math. What's it been, 7 years?
6 years.
Ish? 6 years?
Oh, sorry, 7 years. I can't add.
7.
Sorry, it's late.
Apparently I can. Almost 8 years. We can kind of talk about a little bit how things have changed. I think the first thing we should discuss about is I don't know. Has Amy Adams made another good movie since this? That's a real question.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to talk bad, obviously, but it's like she's made interesting movies on page. On page, it seems like something that should work. Like, oh, she worked with Joe Wright. We're not going to talk about Joe Wright, personal opinion wise, but on page, it makes sense. Oh, she would do Woman in the Window. On page, it seems right that she would make a movie, a biopic kind of sort of movie with Ron Howard. These decisions make sense, but they never worked. She has a movie coming out with Marielle Heller, who's a great artist herself, but that movie might be good, and that might be the best movie she's made since Arrival. And I wouldn't, and it's kind of, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's in the water when it comes to movies, at least.
Can I read you the movies that she's made since 2016? Just let me read them through. They're bad.
Skip the movie. Skip the TV show.
I will.
We're going to talk about that.
We'll skip that. So, Justice League, Vice, Hillbilly Elegy, The Woman in the Window, Dear Evan Hansen, and Disenchanted, which is, I believe, a sequel to Ella Enchanted.
Enchanted, yeah.
Or Enchanted, whatever it was called.
She living her best life in that movie. I'm not going to give her hate on that.
But man, like, did not getting nominated for Arrival break her? Because, like, what are these movies?
I don't think it was
They're
anything
bad.
like that. Like I think on paper it makes sense. Think about it, Vice.
Vice makes some sense. I get that. Coming off Big Short. Yeah.
Off of Big Short, right? Makes sense. Joe Wright, Atonement. Atonement.
No. Atonement was before. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Hillbilly Elegy is almost offensively bad, though.
Ron Howard, same thing. It makes no sense. It should have been good. I mean, those pieces are usually good, but those pieces didn't work. And that's just what happens with this industry, right? Like my dad says it all the time. There's like nothing's guaranteed when you're coming to make a movie. You don't know if it's going to be a success. You don't know if you're going to be on top. You're going to be down in the gutter.
Did you think Dear Evan Hansen was going to be a success?
Mark Platt, who produced La La Land, produced that, and his son is the guy who's the main guy in that movie. But we're not going to talk about that movie.
The guy who looks 30 years old in high school. Yeah,
bro.
Jeez,
we're not memeing. We're not memeing.
Oh,
but
okay.
So yeah, I will. So what I wanted to say though was the only project that has been great since is Sharp Objects, and I know you haven't seen it, and I'd argue that that's her best performance ever. So she's put in one, and it's a really great one. Jean-Marc Vallée, who's actually friends with Denis before Jean passed away, very young. His show Big Little Lies is great too, but Jean-Marc, what he did with that project and what Amy put the team on the back on Sharp Objects, and she makes that story work. Sydney Sweeney's in that for one episode before Euphoria and all that, and she comes in so hard and knocks you emotionally to the ground. But watch Sharp Objects. It's on HBO. Great show. Bradford Young, he did great stuff after this, and it's like I told you, it kind of went back and forth with him, and I do really hope he comes back and still shoots movies because he's got an amazing eye for film.
Do you think it's interesting that Denis went 2 back-to-back IP movies and is going to be doing a 3rd IP movie after this? This was his last non-IP.
I knew you were going to ask this. Like Denis went from making, and that's the thing, Denis, I was listening to an interview with Denis. I literally fell asleep listening to Denis Villeneuve. Amazing thing to do. But he was talking about how he always wanted to make a science fiction movie, and 21 Laps, Sean Levy's like co-producer, whatever, they came to him with this script, and he's like, of course I want to make this movie. And then he didn't even get to do the press for Arrival before he started working on Blade Runner, and he literally is wrapped Blade Runner as he's doing press for Arrival. Like, this man was working nonstop. He literally says, I made 5 movies within 6 years. I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I just think it's a bit disappointing that, he...
No, whoa.
It's disappointing.
Back up that train.
I'm not backing it up.
I think Denis is doing what he wants as an artist, and he's using the biggest platforms possible to bring to life the characters that he wanted to when he was a kid, or at least a teenager, when it comes to Dune. And it's not, and I would say, yeah, in most cases it might be a bad thing, but this is like Nolan doing Batman. This is like Greta doing Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We can argue all we want, but these people doing these IP things, I understand the hate for it, because these are great artists using their time in a way that takes up a lot of their time, and it might not even be a good product. I'm looking at you, Indiana Jones, for James Mangold, but
that was bad.
It's like, I understand your apprehension, but I see it as a great beauty, because I know for a fact that after he's done with Dune, or how many of our Dune things that he does, we're waiting for Dune Part 2, Dune coming. But after he's done with that, I think he's going to go back and, do some lower juice.
I just hope he goes back.
Little insight, Ryan Coogler is going back to mid-budget movies.
He should.
And he did, 2 Black Panthers. He's done with that. He's going back, and he's got the, people are going to come to him and give him the money to do projects that he wants to do.
I just get afraid that these directors get lost in the woods for a while, where they start doing 3 or 4 IP movies back to back, and then you kind of forget that these guys make incredible original movies, or at least they're based on books or something, And
I think the only person who's gotten away with it is James Gunn, because he's gone through. For me personally, we're not going to talk about your opinions about those movies, but I think what he did with Guardians and the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, he's consistently made work that is various and just as great than he would have made in a smaller budget.
He's made various comic book movies. I don't consider James Gunn on the same level of any of these people we just mentioned, because he makes comic book movies.
I consider him as the same level,
but they're comic book movies.
Artist.
And at the end of the day,
we ain't gonna
point
get
to
into that
point to me an original movie that James Gunn did.
conversation.
No, point to me in a non-IP movie that James Gunn has done that's been good.
Super, Slither.
Really?
No,
you got to go that far back. That's what I'm saying. How long has
wait,
it been since
no.
he's been
Are you
lost
saying
in
for
the woods?
IP movies?
Non-IP movies.
He hasn't had that much non-IP movies.
That's
man.
what I'm saying.
He made like 2 or 3.
He can't be compared to these guys because he doesn't do original work. You know, that's what I'm saying.
But he writes his movies though, man. He
Yeah.
writes all of his movies,
But-
and everything that he does, like all these other movies started using needle drops because of him, because he did it in Guardians of the
not
Galaxy.
because of
And
him.
I'm not saying
Not because of him. See, that's why your posters are
mean,
falling in the back
could
because
say-
you're lying.
you
You're
could say-
lying, and now you're cursed because your posters are all falling apart because you're lying.
okay. You could say Tarantino, but I think the way that like he talks,
I can say
or you
Martin
haven't seen
Scorsese. I can say
haven't
before
seen-
Martin Scorsese.
You haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And when the acoustic for Creep starts playing, man, anytime I hear it now, I start
All I have to do is watch a video of Josh
perfect.
Dobbs scoring a touchdown on the Vikings to see a Creed song. Have you seen that? It's really funny whenever someone
This
on the
man acting like I got time to watch football.
I'm just
I barely
saying.
got time to watch movies.
Anyways, let's keep moving because that's
we're in a
another
fantasy league, guys,
debate.
and I went from like being number 2 to being 0. Like it's bad.
Vikash, who's your MVP for this movie?
You the MVPs. You know who that MVP is? It ain't the mama. It's Denis. Because this movie,
Me too.
this script, if Denis wasn't there, everything would be lesser. Every single person that came onto this project would not be there. And you could say that for most movies, but for this project specifically, I think Denis has a talent of finding scripts that are just good enough. And he's like, oh, I can punch this up. I could go on about it being about like sets or designs or anything like that, but I'm going to use only one thing. And that's the script itself. It doesn't mention the word the script itself mentions the word gift from the scene that was my action of the Zeus scene, the scene where the explosion happens. Louise in the script says, oh, this is a gift. This is a gift. It keeps coming up. The word gift keeps coming up. But in the movie, it's edited to where the word gift doesn't come up till almost the end of the movie, where like the emotional impact of the word gift instead of weapon is the most emotionally potent. And that is a testament to him. It's a testament to Joe Walker. It's a testament to every single person in between that understands that. And Denis is the one who is enterprising all that. And
Yeah.
much props to him.
So yeah, Denny.
Think about the Sicario too. Sicario would not be good without him.
Yeah, and no, I agree, because one thing that Denny has a gift for that few other directors do quite as well are his ability for restraint. He shows a lot of restraint in this movie, restraint and pacing. Let me just say that, because this is also a movie that could have easily been really slow, really long, and really boring. And it wasn't. He has the restraint to show you exactly what you need to know when you need to know it early in the movie before the twist. And he has the mind to how to keep a movie like this, which is really procedural for most of the movie, to pace it to where it's still interesting, to where he's revealing what you need to learn at the right times to keep you interested, but also not too much to spoil the twist. That's a really fine line, and not a lot of other people could have pulled that off as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? I think you have this opinion about it. It's like when they show flashbacks and like intercut flashbacks, it's almost like a crutch that doesn't work for most movies. It's like, oh yeah, it's like you remember this moment that happened. If you don't remember it, here's me visually reminding you of it. But every time that it happens in this movie, it feels earnest, it feels needed, and it's concise. And it might be his most concise movie if you think about it.
Let me think.
Blade Runner's a long movie, bro.
Enemy,
maybe. Yeah.
See, we're lying. That's why it's falling. It's Arrival.
Yeah,
Fine.
I know. It's Arrival.
That's fine. That's why if you
Time
can't
is a
see,
flat circle. It already happened.
Vikash has a bunch of posters that are taped with blue tape behind them that are just falling off the wall right now
fell
as
off.
we're
It fell
an
off. It
hour
fully
and a
fell
half
off.
into recording. It is falling off the wall, and now you just see Joaquin's Phoenix face just behind him left. That's it.
Y'all, if you can't see it, I'm holding up a cover of 12 Angry Men. I really love this movie. We're going to talk about it on the podcast at some point. This is also I'm joking, guys.
Okay, thank
whatever.
you. I thought you were about to talk about every movie poster, because there's a lot of them. You know, those none of you can probably see it. There's a lot of them.
I've got so many more.
Okay.
I've got so many more. That's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes right there too. Matt Reeves, shout out.
Okay, thank you, Vikash. Let's talk about, before we go, what are some companion movies that you saw that would go well with this?
Okay, so I did already mention what was it? I mentioned Sharp Objects just as a random aside for Amy Adams. But if you really want this sort of vibe where it's like a first contact movie, obviously you have The Goats, you have Close Encounters, Contact, The Goats. Independence Day is kind of is more apocalypse movie genre movie, but it is a contact movie too, and it's a great ride. I recommend it to everyone. Zach hasn't seen it. Bill Pullman's speech in that movie is like one of the best speeches in the in this history of cinema for me. But the one that I really want to recommend out of all those is Jeff Nichols' Midnight Special, which is actually released the same year as this, and it kind of deals with the same sort of story. It is very much Close Encounters of our era, more so than Arrival is. So I would recommend Midnight Special, and I think it's a great ride. It's a very small movie compared to even Arrival, but every single emotional point in that movie with Michael Shannon and his son hits extremely well.
Yep, I agree. That's a good call.
What's your companion movie, man?
Yeah, sure. One that was a really good call, Midnight Special, it being more of our Close Encounters than Arrival. I do agree with that. And it's also why I did not put Close Encounters as a companion movie, because even though there are a lot of similarities, I don't think it is similar. So I put two. First off, I did talk a little bit earlier about Tree of Life. I think the ideas of exploring existence is in that movie and also in Arrival.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, in the cinematography
Tree of Life is a bit
well.
heavy. I will mention, like, Tree of Life is kind of like there's a bare to no narrative kind of within it, but there is a narrative. So don't be surprised about that, but it's like one of the most visually amazing movies I've ever seen, where it's like it'll affect the way that you see the world. And that's how, from my opinion, is every time you watch a great movie with great cinematography, it kind of changes the way that you watch your world and experience the world that you're living in.
But I want to give you...
Roger Deakins does that extremely well.
He does. I want to give
Bradford Young did it with this movie too.
I want to give you a second one, though, because this is the one I really thought of. This really made me think of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Ooh,
because
shot by Alan Curris.
I don't want to spoil that movie if you haven't seen it, but there are themes in that. The theme of that movie is very similar to the theme about what we talked about what would you do if you could actually, that's not a spoiler.
Yes.
What would you do if you could redo your life? That movie tackles that at a very small level. Arrival is a macro level of that, but Eternal Sunshine is a micro level of a relationship. What would you do if you knew a relationship was going to go bad? And the movie answers that at the end, and I won't say what happens, but it does pose the question.
It's great science fiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it does pose the question is, what would you do if you're in a relationship that you know at the end it's not going to work out? So I think that's a good companion movie because it has a lot of the same themes but tackles the question on a micro.
I did rewatch Michel Gondry's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind very recently, and it still hits extremely well. You get a little Mark Ruffalo in the cut too. Jim Carrey, one of his best roles. The great, amazing Kate Winslet, one of her best roles too. Zach's wife kind of looks like her right now, Manic Pixie Girl vibes, but it's amazing what they do with that movie, and it's a small budget movie, and it really is science fiction at its greatest, just like Arrival is, in my opinion, where you get to experience a what if in a very weird way, and it emotionally hits you in the gut, in your heart, in your mind. Great recommendation, Zach.
We might need to do that on the pod at some point.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, that's our episode for Arrival this week. We'll have another episode coming next month for Christmas. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. One of the best movies, in my opinion, ever made. That is a Christmas movie. We're not going to argue about this, Zach. It's a Christmas movie. Die Hard. We're going to be doing Die Hard on the pod next time. We appreciate everyone coming back to listen. I hope if you haven't listened to the first episode, you go and watch that. I really recommend watching the movie and then, listening to us so you get the most potent, experience of listening to us talk about it. Zach, let's get this podcast on the road.
Yes, sir. Guys, we're only going to get better as we go. and we appreciate you for listening. You can find me on Letterboxd and Twitter as Nadell96.
And everything is now linked at our, on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to it. If you're on Twitter, everything we have on our links. Come find us. Come conversate with us about these movies or any other movies. We love to talk. And just keep watching movies and lead your life with love.
Real quick before we stop. Kat, can you show them your earrings you wore for the podcast specifically?
Hi, everybody. I totally forgot to mention this. I was too excited to talk. So I wore little UFO earrings that are abducting little cows.
Oh, that is cows.
On
Respect to the cows.
For this Alien movie.
Thank you, Kat.
Yeah, of course.
It's a great movie.
That's it's always great for an audio podcast to show visuals. That's always a great thing.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm going.
I will describe
Kat
them as glittery purple with some holographic pieces.
We will post pictures of the earrings on the Instagram for our podcast. So if you do want to see them, go there.
But follow us on Instagram, TikTok, no Facebook because we're not that old. But come find us. We love to have conversations. Goodbye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cinema Pursuit. Cinema Pursuit is produced by Katie Nadell, Zach Nadell, and Vikash Patel. Special thanks to Cole Cooper for the intro and outro music. You can listen to Cinema Pursuit on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you may listen to podcasts. Follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Cinema Pursuit Podcast, Twitter or X at Cin Pursuit Pod, and check out our subreddit, r/Cinema Pursuit.